Ford's CEO just revealed why 10 Ford trucks are now selling for pennies. And it confirms the market crash is already underway. Incentives are expanding, inventory is stacking up, and resale values are collapsing faster than expected. Behind the scenes, demand assumptions failed, and pricing strategies broke. If you own one of these trucks, your equity may already be shrinking. If you're shopping, leverage just shifted in your favor. And if you're waiting, the biggest moves may already be happening quietly. So why are prices falling this fast? Who misread the demand this badly? And what happens when the best sellers start breaking? Ford Ranger. Nobody expected the midsize comeback to crack first. But the Ford Ranger is already flashing warning lights across dealer lots nationwide. Once positioned as the perfect balance between size, price, and capability, late-model gas-powered Rangers entered the market at a moment when assumptions were already shifting. Transaction prices climbed steadily, incentives quietly crept in, and suddenly the gap between this truck and a discounted full-size pickup started to disappear. That single pricing overlap changed everything. The Ranger carries real history. It built its reputation through the 1990s and early 2000s as a durable, affordable workhorse, then disappeared for years before its highly anticipated return. When it came back, expectations were high. Modern styling, turbocharged power, and improved interiors were supposed to reset the midsize segment. Instead, rising interest rates, aggressive full-size production, and changing buyer math undercut that promise faster than anticipated. Performance was never the problem. The turbocharged four-cylinder delivers strong torque, respectable towing numbers, and everyday drivability. The issue is perception. When similarly equipped trucks push close to full-size pricing, the value equation breaks. Shoppers hesitate, inventory slows, and depreciation accelerates. Dealers respond the only way they can, with discounts that quietly reset resale benchmarks. Market data shows the pattern clearly. Days on lot counts stretched longer, dealer cash increased, and late-model used, Rangers began trading below prior expectations. This is not a collapse driven by defects or recalls. It is a valuation correction driven by positioning, timing, and competition inside Ford's own showroom. The emotional impact matters too. The Ranger was supposed to feel smart, efficient, and future-proof. Watching prices soften undermines confidence, especially when alternatives suddenly look more compelling at similar monthly costs. Once confidence cracks, momentum follows. The Ranger's slide is not catastrophic, but it is instructive. It shows how quickly a safe assumption can unravel when pricing, production, and demand drift out of alignment. And if this is happening here, the next rank exposes what happens when hype collapses even faster, under pressure, with consequences that ripple outward faster than expected, setting the stage for a deeper breakdown that the next rank exposes in unmistakable detail, where pricing mistakes turn into inventory crises, and the market reaction becomes impossible to ignore from this point. Ford Maverick. The Ford Maverick did not slowly lose value. It snapped back to reality with shocking speed. When the compact pickup launched, demand overwhelmed supply, and early units exploded in resale pricing. Used Mavericks were trading thousands above original sticker, fueled by scarcity, social hype, and the belief that production would never catch up. That belief collapsed the moment supply normalized. The Maverick arrived at exactly the right time, when fuel prices were climbing and affordability mattered more than ever. Its compact footprint, standard hybrid availability, and low entry price rewrote expectations for what a pickup could be. The problem came later, when flipping replaced ownership and used listings detached from reality. Dealers and resellers priced early trucks as if shortages were permanent, not temporary. As production scaled through 2023 and 2024, the market corrected. New inventory returned, wait lists evaporated, and buyers recalculated value. Once used pricing slipped below inflated peaks. Momentum reversed instantly. Listings lingered, price cuts followed, and depreciation accelerated far faster than most expected. There was nothing mechanically wrong with the Maverick. The issue was narrative. When expectations detach from supply, the correction is always violent. Early inflated used units absorbed the impact first, dragging resale benchmarks down with them. This shift matters because it reveals how quickly perceived scarcity can unwind. Once pricing resets, confidence disappears, and confidence is what props up demand. The Maverick remains practical, efficient, and capable, but its early resale fantasy is over. That reversal sent a message across the entire truck market. Before that happens, watch how incentives quietly expand, auction prices soften, and residual forecasts adjust, signaling that the correction is no longer contained, but spreading outward through dealer networks, finance desks, and valuation models that once assumed stability was guaranteed forever across the domestic light truck landscape right now nationwide. And if a compact pickup can swing from untouchable to discounted this fast, the next truck shows what happens when overconfidence, production, and pricing collide on a much larger scale. Where the stakes rise, inventory piles up, and the correction stops being quiet and starts shaking the entire segment in ways that cannot be ignored as the countdown pushes forward into the next reveal. If this breakdown is changing how you see truck prices, take 1 second to like the video, subscribe for upcoming market updates, and share your experience in the comments so others can see how fast values are shifting right now. Chevrolet Silverado 1500. Luxury pricing was supposed to signal strength, but on this truck, it became an anchor pulling values downward faster than expected. The Chevrolet Silverado 1500 climbed steadily into premium territory as feature lists grew longer and trims stacked technology, leather, and appearance packages on top of a work truck foundation. That strategy worked when demand felt endless. Once interest rates tightened and affordability became the primary filter, those high-trim gas models stalled almost overnight. This truck has deep roots. For decades, the Silverado name represented durability, familiarity, and broad appeal across construction sites and suburban driveways alike. The modern generation added refinement, powerful gas engines, and interiors designed to rival full luxury vehicles. The problem is not capability. The problem is positioning. Market data tells a clear story. As similarly equipped, full-size trucks crossed price thresholds that once belonged to premium sport utility vehicles, inventory slowed. Days on lot stretched. Incentives expanded quietly. Used listings adjusted downward to match reality rather than aspiration. Each price cut set a new benchmark, and those benchmarks moved fast. High-trim Silverados suffer the most because depreciation compounds. The more expensive the starting point, the harder the fall once demand softens. Buyers hesitate when monthly payments approach uncomfortable territory, especially when lower trims or competing models offer similar performance for less. That hesitation cascades through dealer networks, auctions, and residual forecasts. Emotion plays a role here. These trims were marketed as statements of success, comfort, and permanence. Watching values slip challenges that narrative. Confidence erodes, and once confidence fades, momentum reverses. Trucks stop feeling like assets and start feeling like liabilities. None of this means the Silverado 1500 is failing. It means the market is correcting excess, overbuilt inventory, ambitious pricing, and shifting priorities collided at the wrong moment, and high-trim gas models absorbed the impact first. This entry matters because it shows how quickly premium positioning can unravel when the broader market tightens. And if this correction feels sharp, the next truck proves what happens when size, fuel costs, and timing stack pressure even higher, pushing the countdown into territory where depreciation accelerates with far less warning. Ford Expedition. The full-size sport utility vehicle was once the safest bet in the driveway, and the Ford Expedition is now proving how quickly that assumption can fade. For years, the Expedition represented space, power, and long-distance confidence. The standard-length gas version fit households that needed room without stepping into extended territory. It carried a reputation built through the late 1990s, the 2000s, and into the modern era as a dependable large platform. That legacy is now colliding with a market that has shifted underneath it. Fuel costs rose, priorities changed, and efficiency began to matter more than sheer size. At the same time, pricing crept upward. What once felt justified started to feel heavy. As interest rates tightened, monthly payments grew, and demand softened first on non-hybrid, standard-length builds. Inventory began lingering longer than expected, especially outside peak seasonal windows. Market indicators followed quickly. Days on lot stretched. Dealer incentives expanded quietly, and resale benchmarks adjusted downward. This is not a collapse driven by mechanical failure or reliability concerns. It is a demand recalibration. When a vehicle's primary advantage is size, and size becomes less desirable, values respond fast. Emotionally, this shift hits hard. The Expedition has always projected stability and preparedness. Watching depreciation accelerate challenges that perception. Confidence weakens when vehicles designed for permanence start behaving like short-term assets. That emotional response feeds the market correction just as much as raw data. Performance remains strong. The turbocharged gas engine delivers ample power. Towing capability remains competitive, and highway comfort is still a strength. None of that offsets changing economics. Buyers hesitate when fuel consumption, insurance, and financing note all rise together. Hesitation turns into delay. Delay turns into discounting. The standard-length Expedition is particularly exposed. It lacks the extended cargo advantage of longer variants and the efficiency appeal of hybrid options. That middle position leaves it vulnerable when preferences polarize. Dealers adjust pricing to move units, and each adjustment resets expectations lower. This entry matters because it highlights how quickly practical vehicles lose footing when conditions change. And if a full-size sport utility vehicle can slip this fast, the next rank reveals what happens when engines, identity, and long-term uncertainty collide, pushing depreciation into a sharper, more uncomfortable phase that accelerates the countdown forward. Ram 1500. The rumble that once defined confidence on the road is now exposing how quickly sentiment can turn against even the most iconic engines. For years, the Ram 1508 cylinder gas models represented power, presence, and emotional pull. The sound, the torque, and the reputation carried through the 2000s and into the early 2010s as symbols of capability and identity. That legacy is now colliding with a market that has recalculated what strength is worth. Fuel costs rose, efficiency expectations shifted, and long-term ownership math became unavoidable. At the same time, pricing on well-equipped Ram 1500 trims continued creeping upward. What once felt justified began to feel exposed. As financing tightened, monthly payments grew heavier, and demand softened first on 8-cylinder gas builds. Inventory started lingering longer than expected, especially outside peak buying cycles. Market indicators followed quickly. Days on lot stretched, dealer incentives expanded quietly, and auction values adjusted downward. This is not a collapse driven by performance failures or reliability concerns. It is a demand recalibration. When operating costs rise and future direction feels uncertain, values respond fast. Emotionally, this shift cuts deep. The engine note that once signaled confidence now triggers hesitation. Long-term uncertainty around powertrain direction amplifies doubt. When emotional loyalty meets financial pressure, hesitation spreads faster than data alone would suggest. Performance remains strong. Towing capability is still competitive. Acceleration remains confident, and everyday usability has not disappeared. None of that offsets changing economics. Buyers pause when fuel consumption, insurance, and financing obligations rise together. Pauses become delays. Delays turn into discounting. 8-cylinder Ram 1500 models are particularly exposed. They sit at the intersection of rising operating costs and shifting future expectations. That position leaves little room for stability when preferences change. Dealers respond by adjusting pricing to move inventory, and each adjustment resets market expectations lower. This entry matters because it marks the point where emotional appeal no longer protects value. And if an engine with this much history can slide steadily, the next rank reveals what happens when pricing pressure, identity, and uncertainty collide even harder, pushing depreciation into a sharper phase that accelerates the countdown forward. Toyota Tundra. Reliability myths crack hardest when a trusted name changes its formula under pressure. The Toyota Tundra built decades of confidence by doing things the slow, proven way. For years, it relied on simplicity, durability, and predictable ownership costs to protect value. That reputation stretched from the late 1990s through the 2000s and into the modern era. The shift to twin-turbo gas power was meant to modernize performance and efficiency without sacrificing strength. On paper, the numbers worked, but markets do not run on paper. Buyers hesitated as complexity increased, and long-term durability questions surfaced. At the same time, pricing climbed, incentives crept in, and resale expectations quietly adjusted. Market data shows days on lot extending, and late model values softening faster than anticipated. This is not a quality collapse, it is a confidence reset. Emotion plays an outsized role because expectations for this truck were higher than almost any competitor. When stability is assumed, even small doubts carry disproportionate weight. Performance remains strong, with ample towing, smooth delivery, and confident highway manners. None of do that fully offsets uncertainty around complexity, long-term ownership, and future market direction. As hesitation spreads, dealers respond with pricing adjustments that ripple through resale benchmarks. Each adjustment reinforces the perception that something fundamental has shifted. The twin-turbo shift did not fail mechanically, it failed emotionally in a market craving reassurance. That distinction explains why depreciation here feels sharper than data alone would suggest. Auction lanes, dealer trades, and valuation models are already reflecting this recalibration. Once expectations reset, recovery takes far longer than the initial slide. That is why this moment matters beyond one brand or one powertrain decision. It signals how sensitive the full-size truck segment has become to perception shifts. And with that sensitivity rising, the next rank reveals a truck where market pressure, pricing strategy, and volume collide faster, pushing depreciation into an even steeper descent as the countdown tightens under conditions already spreading across the segment now. If you want to stay ahead of where this market is heading next, subscribe now so you do not miss the next breakdown. Deeper data and early warnings as pricing shifts accelerate across trucks that most people believe are safe. Ford F-150 Lightning. The silence under the hood was supposed to signal the future, but it instead revealed how fast optimism can evaporate when expectations outrun reality. The Ford F-150 Lightning launched into the market with enormous momentum. Headlines promised transformation, waitlists stretched long, and early pricing signaled confidence. The standard range version was positioned as the accessible entry point, a bridge between tradition and electrification. That positioning is now under strain. Real-world usage reshaped perception quickly. Range limitations underload, charging availability concerns, and cold weather performance entered everyday conversations. At the same time, pricing remained elevated. What initially felt like a bold step forward began to feel restrictive as financing tightened and incentives quietly surfaced. Market signals followed, dealer lots filled faster than anticipated, fleet orders softened, days on lot extended. Used standard range units adjusted downward as demand recalibrated. This is not a rejection of electric trucks as a concept. It is a mismatch between cost, capability expectations, and current infrastructure. Emotionally, the Lightning carried heavy symbolism. It was meant to prove that the best-selling truck platform could evolve without compromise. Watching values soften challenges that narrative. Confidence fades when early adopters hesitate, and later buyers wait. Performance is not the issue. Instant torque delivers impressive acceleration. Towing remains viable within limits. Daily driving is smooth and quiet. None of that fully offsets anxiety around charging speed, range under stress, and long-term resale uncertainty. Standard range models face the sharpest pressure because they sit at the narrowest margin. Any compromise feels larger. As larger battery variants and future revisions dominate attention, these early builds absorb the correction first. Dealers respond by adjusting pricing to move inventory, and each adjustment resets benchmarks lower. This entry matters because it shows how innovation can amplify depreciation when timing and infrastructure lag behind ambition. The Lightning did not fail, but expectations overshot the moment. And if an electric version of the most recognizable truck in the country can slide this quickly, the next rank exposes what happens when traditional powertrains face similar pressure at far greater scale, pulling the countdown into territory where market leadership itself begins to fracture under accelerating correction forces. Ford Super Duty. The moment a work truck starts dressing like a luxury flagship is the moment the market begins asking harder questions. Ford Super Duty high-end non-fleet trims were designed to blend extreme capability with premium comfort. Over time, leather interiors, advanced technology, and upscale finishes pushed these trucks far beyond their original utilitarian roots. That evolution worked when demand felt limitless and pricing pressure stayed muted. That environment no longer exists. These trims carry serious credentials: heavy towing capacity, proven gas and diesel powertrains, and long-distance stability remain unquestioned. The issue is not function, it is alignment. As pricing climbed into territory once reserved for high-end sport utility vehicles, the audience narrowed. Financing tightened, monthly obligations grew heavier, and demand recalibrated faster than expected. Market signals reflect the shift clearly. Days on lot extended beyond historical norms. Dealer incentives expanded quietly. Auction values adjusted downward in response to slower turnover. This is not a collapse triggered by reliability concerns or mechanical shortcomings. It is a valuation correction driven by overreach. Emotion plays a critical role here. These trims were marketed as statements of success and permanence. Watching depreciation accelerate challenges that image. Confidence erodes when a truck built for durability begins behaving like a discretionary luxury item in resale markets. Performance remains formidable. Payload ratings stay competitive. Towing confidence remains a core strength. Long-haul comfort has never been higher. None of that fully offsets the reality that fewer buyers can justify the price when economic pressure rises across the board. High-end non-fleet Super Duty models are especially exposed because they sit outside guaranteed commercial demand. Without fleet absorption to stabilize volume, pricing adjustments become the primary tool to move inventory. Each adjustment resets expectations lower, compounding depreciation. This entry matters because it marks a tipping point. When even the most capable trucks struggle to defend premium pricing, it signals a broader recalibration underway across the segment. Strength alone no longer guarantees insulation from market forces, and if this much capability cannot protect value at the top end, the next rank reveals what happens when production volume, pricing strategy, and brand leadership collide, pushing the countdown into a phase where the correction stops being selective and starts reshaping the entire truck market with undeniable force. Ford Bronco. Scarcity built the legend, but volume is what finally caught the Ford Bronco off guard. When the Bronco returned, demand overwhelmed supply almost instantly. Reservations stacked up, production struggled to keep pace, and early pricing surged. Core trims became symbols of access, not excess, And that perception drove values upward faster than fundamentals could support. For a moment, availability itself felt like value. As production stabilized through 2022 and 2023, the equation changed. Assembly lines caught up, backlog thinned, and inventory appeared on lots nationwide. What once felt rare became visible everywhere. That shift alone was enough to change buyer behavior. Pricing pressure followed quickly. Dealers no longer needed to ration units. Incentives emerged quietly. Used listings adjusted downward as buyers stopped chasing premiums. This was not driven by dissatisfaction with capability. It was driven by saturation. The Bronco still delivers. Off-road, performance remains strong. Modular design keeps appeal high, and the emotional pull of the nameplate is intact. None of that prevents depreciation when supply outruns demand. Core trims feel the impact first because they represent the largest volume and the narrowest margins. Emotionally, the reversal stings. The Bronco revival carried identity, nostalgia, and promise. Watching values soften undermines that narrative. Confidence weakens when something framed as exclusive becomes ordinary. That emotional shift accelerates market correction far faster than production numbers alone would suggest. Market data reinforces the trend. Days on lot extended. Auction values softened. Trade-in expectations recalibrated. Each adjustment reinforced the perception that the peak had passed. Once that belief takes hold, recovery slows dramatically. Overproduction does not mean failure. It means misalignment. When excitement is front-loaded and volume arrives later, the market always corrects. Core trims absorb that correction because they anchor pricing across the lineup. This entry matters because it exposes how hype unwinds when reality arrives. The Bronco did not lose relevance, it lost insulation, and if a revival icon can slide this fast, once supply catches up, the final rank reveals what happens when the highest volume truck in the market loses its footing, pulling the entire segment into a far deeper correction where leadership itself becomes the clearest warning sign still ahead. Ford F-150. The moment the best-selling truck in the country starts slipping, the market stops whispering and starts paying attention. For decades, the Ford F-150 defined stability. Gas-powered mid-trims sat at the center of the lineup, balancing price, capability, and familiarity. Through the 1990s, the 2000s, and into the modern era, this configuration became the default choice across driveways, job sites, and fleets alike. That scale once protected value. Today, it is exposing vulnerability. Production volume surged as confidence stayed high. Pricing followed, climbing steadily as features increased, and margins were stretched. Then, conditions shifted. Interest rates tightened, affordability weakened, and demand cooled unevenly. Mid-trims felt it first because they represent the widest slice of volume and the thinnest buffer against hesitation. Market data confirms the break. Dealer lots filled. Incentives expanded across regions. Auction values adjusted downward in rapid succession. This is not a reflection of declining quality or capability. It is a correction driven by oversupply meeting changing expectations at scale. Emotionally, this matters more than any other entry. The F-150 is not just another truck. It is the benchmark. When its values soften, confidence across the entire segment wavers. Owners notice. Dealers react. Competitors adjust. The signal travels fast. Performance remains intact. Gas engines deliver proven reliability. Towing remains competitive. And everyday usability is unchanged. None of that offsets the math when monthly payments rise and alternatives crowd the same price window. When hesitation appears here, it spreads everywhere. Non-hybrid mid-trims are especially exposed. They lack the efficiency narrative of newer options, while carrying much of the volume weight. That combination accelerates depreciation when incentives arrive. Each discount resets expectations lower, and those expectations ripple outward across the market. This entry matters because it confirms the correction is no longer isolated. When the market leader bends, the segment follows. This is not panic, it is recalibration. And while this countdown ends here, the story does not. What follows is a market reshaping itself in real time. where timing, pricing, and restraint decide who absorbs losses and who survives the next phase that is already unfolding beyond this list. This market isn't ending, it's resetting, and the signals are already in the data. Some trucks will recover, others won't, and timing will decide who loses equity and who gains leverage. If you own one of these trucks or you're watching prices closely, your experience matters here. Drop a comment with what you're seeing in your area, hit like if this breakdown helped, and subscribe so you don't miss the next update as this correction continues to unfold.